Okay, so we've read a title, we've seen a thumbnail, watched an intro, and now let's get to work. So, the Boonie Packer Redi-Mag. This is a real old product, okay? And what is kind of funny is all the media that I've put out so far that includes this in frame absolutely separates a couple of different generations of guys. One that has no idea what this product even is, and the other, which is minimum in their 30s at this point, I am 34, absolutely saw those Magpul Dynamics DVDs. I've only ever used this at two different points in my life. One as a left-handed guy only, and the other as a guy that taught himself how to use anything right-handed, to the point where I shoot rifle right-handed and handgun left-handed, which only really changes from one type of system to another based on action type or boredom, really. Now, the reason why I stopped using this as an ambi control as a left-handed guy is rather detailed, but we'll get into that here in just a bit. What exactly is this? Now, clearly it's a magazine well that you bolt to your magazine well. And all this is a clamp-style system that wraps itself around the magazine well of your lower receiver. There's a little rubber gasket that is put in place, and this one also wraps around that lower receiver to prevent metal gouging, pair of screws, and reset. The magazine release on the Redi-Mag itself actually does require quite a bit of pressure to depress, and it is folded inboard towards the receiver to prevent accidental drops, or at least help with accidental drops. And all this really does is provide you the option to put another magazine on board the gun to help yourself out with a long list of things that you could find yourself in, and frankly, it does help out a lot. So here's the thing about this. The very last thing that I'm going to talk about is bolt lock reload speed, because A, gonna make you wait. Two, that is the smallest advantage that this thing offers you. The greatest advantage that this thing offers you is that it gives you the ability to keep the bolt lock reload as far away as possible, or it keeps you out of your pouches for as long as possible. A couple of examples to this, and there's going to be a pretty heavy military lean on this, but we're going to push ourselves right back to the civilian side of the house also, because it does have quite a few uses there as well. But as far as military side of the house, okay, the first thing that a lot of people think about is, well, close range type stuff, where you got a second magazine on the gun, the extra weight is there, it's going to be high intensity type stuff and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? It actually does shine in that arena quite well. If you have multiple buildings, multiple rooms, multiple floors within those buildings, that sort of thing, the reality of the matter is that the chances of going into bolt lock reload, even if there is a bunch of shooting to do, is still pretty low. One of the reasons for this is you top the guns off if there's some shooting to do, or you're doing so little shooting that it doesn't matter in the first place. And this really does help out with that quite a bit, because again, this keeps you from having to go in the pouches, either on the chest or on the belt. So all this really does for me is, okay, now I have 60 rounds on board the gun. If a bunch of shooting's been done, I can simply top off the gun right there. And even if there is a partial hanging off the side of the rifle, that's still 15, 10, 20 rounds that's just hanging off the left-hand side of the gun, and if I need them, I can just go get them. Or if I have the opportunity to, after topping the gun off once, and then I've been through a few rooms or a couple of floors where I haven't had a bunch of shooting to do, and get an opportunity, I can take a magazine out of the Redi-Mag that is a partial at this point, stick that in the open magazine pouch that I drew this from in the first place, and then top the Redi-Mag off itself, and we're right back where we started with two fresh magazines on board the gun ready to go. Today's video is sponsored by the Sonoran Desert Institute. Have you ever thought about making a living in the firearms industry? If you enjoy gun repair, ballistics, learning about firearms, the Sonoran Desert Institute might just be a good fit for you. To find out more about SDI, visit sdi.edu. Use the link in the description down below, or call 480-999-4767 today. And now back to the video. In addition to this, and what is not thought of anywhere near as much for guys that used to use these a bunch, is that if you're doing more conventional maneuver warfare type stuff, this keeps me on task and keeping my eyes over there longer. This keeps me from having to roll in from a goofy position into an even goofier position to go into my pouches if I have to help out with base of fire element, or if I have to supplement light and medium machine guns with rifle fire, because you just do that, right? Especially depending on what sort of task that you're performing at this point in time. It keeps me from those pouches again, especially if I'm fighting off the ground or if I'm in a really goofy position. It keeps me away from those pouches. Again, it's all up front. What this isn't, though, and what this isn't for me at least, in the amount of time that I've put in on this during 2 different phases of my life, is a way to carry 240 rounds instead of 210, just as an example. Whatever your combat load is, I'm usually not walking away from our assembly area with the Redi-Mag itself loaded with an extra magazine. The reason for this, honestly, is rather self-evident the second that you look at it for more than 3 seconds. Even if it's difficult to depress, I don't like the concept of an exposed magazine release, especially if I have to walk around with the gun long term. So what this is, for me at least, is something that I use if I am about to go to one point, because yeah, I know it's not in vogue anymore. Oh Jesus, stone that bundle of sticks. But if I'm at a point in time where I know that I have to do a bunch of stuff with guns, I typically go to one point. And if I am at a point in time where I'm gonna go to that point, I'm also gonna pull a magazine out of one of my pouches and stick that in the Redi-Mag as well, because again, I don't want to go back here. And as far as that's concerned, it would be the last magazine I would ever grab if I was working my way through them on regular bolt lock reloads to prevent odd placement of gear. And then of course, if I start using the thing and if I start topping off the gun, I can go back to that open magazine pouch and either refresh the Redi-Mag itself or just a regular gun, depending on what sort of situation that I'm in. Either way, the flexibility is there. Now, a lot of times I'll get questions on this. Why not just use a regular magazine coupler or a 60-round magazine or a 60-round drum? Now, first and foremost, as far as that's concerned, if you start using the gun a whole bunch with a magazine coupler, you run into the possibility of the magazine that is not inside of the lower receiver starting to shift ammunition forward, whether it be from recoil impulse or you just moving around a whole lot. Number 2, that magazine coupler with those 2 magazines is more or less married to what it is that you're using. If both magazines are partials, they have to go into an odd pouch or a dump pouch. So that doesn't really help me out if I'm trying to streamline certain things. And even still, if I got to throw that thing in a dump pouch and then I have to throw myself into the ground for whatever reason, usually revolving around I would like to stay above ground forever. You know what I mean? I might destroy whatever it is that I land on. And yeah, in that particular moment, that doesn't matter. But if I want to use that thing ever again, it being in pieces doesn't help me. The other part of this too is 60-round magazines are traditionally extremely unreliable, and 60-round drums are also the same, barring a couple of random 1 and 2 examples of extraordinarily reliable for that object examples, which are not many. And even still, if that's the case, I usually have to put these objects, the 60-round drum or this 60-round magazine, in really odd pouches or really stretch out taco pouches for whatever reason that you would want to put one of these magazines into a pouch in the first place. So it doesn't really help me out very much. As far as all of that is concerned, all this really does is it allows me the flexibility to not have to change really anything else. Just adding a magazine well to my magazine well, and I don't have to change anything, so we're good. That helps out quite a lot, but stepping away from the military side of the house, you also have the civilian side of the house, where guys that have truck guns or bag guns that require a lot of space constraint, or in a lot of times require a 20-shot magazine, because a 30-shot magazine is something you would have to detach from the rifle and store separately in the first place. This now affords you to carry 2 of those 20-shot magazines, because adding a little bit of width to the overall firearm is nowhere near the tax it is for a standard capacity magazine anyway. And while this may limit options as far as the particular type of folding stock that you want to use, what it does do is allow you a little bit more latitude, because now instead of having to detach a single 30-round magazine, now I have 40 total rounds because I have 2 20-shot magazines in the gun and on the Redi-Mag itself. That helps out quite a bit. And lastly, of course, you have the home defense option where, yeah, you probably don't air quotes need an extra 30-shot magazine on the gun, but just being able to top off the gun and just stay at 30 rounds and have everything on board, I don't have to worry about anything else, this is it, I have it, is something that honestly helps me out in the individual mental security part of all this. At least to me anyway, it's got some legs. Now, as far as it being an ambi control is concerned, or just as an object you'd put on your gun in the first place, there's a couple of caveats here. I personally view the Magpul bad lever as absolutely required for this product, or at least their version of one as well, because they sell it. I personally don't prefer that because of all of these battery assist device type options that are out there, including the ones that completely replace the bolt catch. I like the rounded nose of the bad levers significantly more. I don't have to worry about square corners, catching on heavy gloves, and frankly, I know how to use one properly, so I don't have to worry about safety concerns either. Point is that if you're going to use this, you really don't want to have to reach all the way around the Redi-Mag itself to depress that bolt catch. So having a bad lever there to help you out a lot with the right-handed or the left-handed side of the house is sort of a requirement on this sort of thing. As far as it being an ambi control is concerned, yeah, it's useful and it can be done and it can be done well, but I would only really recommend this as an ambi control if you are a right-handed person that primarily shoots right-handed but wants the capability to continue to use this left-handed. And the main reason is that if you're left-handed to start, having a full set of ambi controls is just faster, right? Like you got a bad lever, you have an ambi magazine release and that sort of thing. All of that is just a little bit faster, specifically because the extra tension required to depress the magazine button on the Redi-Mag itself, and then having to do that with your index finger as a left-handed guy, honestly kind of slows me down just a little bit too much, so I don't prefer it that way. It still has pretty solid function as an ambi control, so if you are right-handed and then you learn how to use it left-handed, it's not really going to hold you back, but obviously you can tell the difference between being lefty primarily and right-handed primarily, so it's not that big of a deal there. Here's another thing too, and I know that guys are going to bring this up because a lot of people have brought up boat anchor comments. The Redi-Mag device itself adds a couple of ounces to be sure, and a standard capacity magazine is about a pound. Hooray. Here's the deal. Because of the weight distribution on board the gun itself and how centered up that is, it is nowhere near as felt as, for instance, the lamb or the light or the can or whatever else that you've got out front. Fact of the matter is that if you've got a Mod Zero sitting here, which is what that is, and then you stick a Redi-Mag and then a loaded magazine into that Redi-Mag, the weight distribution on that is actually better than a 416, which is about or just a couple of ounces lighter than that whole setup. And the 416 is not that bad either. And a 416 with a Redi-Mag on board and a magazine in that Redi-Mag is still not that bad. Realistically speaking, it's just a thing that we should just relax on, okay? Everyone is entirely too ounce crazed, and then they throw a whole stovetop on their back when they go hike someplace. I think we should probably relax. Another thing that people have brought up, and I don't really know why people haven't thought this through in general when they ask this particular question, is, oh, that's a whole new manual of arms that I have to learn because now I have to work 2 different magazine releases. And frankly, this is hogwash, because the guy that's going to select this is not selecting this to put on board his first rifle, or at least you shouldn't. So the guy that's going to put this on a gun already has some experience with the manual of arms on that rifle, and it's coded into the brain enough to where if you just suddenly start using a rifle that doesn't have one, it's not like you're just going to brain dump how that thing works. It's like, oh my god, I have to use my thumb to drop a bolt catch now. What do I do? That's ridiculous, and I'm really tired of people selling the mental capacity of individuals short, especially individuals that take weapons manipulation seriously. So if that is a thought, stop, because if that is a genuine thought that you have and that's a real reason to complain, you're smooth-brained. And now lastly, we get to talk about speed. If you know how to use this and if you know how to use this well, definitively, this is faster than going to your chest pouch or your belt. It just is. Is it so fast that you have got to put this on every rifle that you own? No, but it is faster. Typically, at least for me, it's round about 0.6 to 0.75 seconds faster than I would have if I had to go to a traditional type reload. As far as proportions go, that's significant, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and try to pretend like that's an end-all be-all. All I'm saying is that it's just a little bit more convenient. Also, if you were thinking about using this instead of a magazine coupler for competitions, I'm going to stop you right there. A magazine magazine coupler in the context of a match is just easier to use because I only have one button to press and I just have that one magazine to switch over, and then I can go to the pouches afterwards if I have multiple reloads to do in that stage, especially if your number one concern is to prevent bolt lock reload as much as possible, which if it's not your number one concern, it should be. As far as the options go, it isn't the fastest thing ever, and it isn't so fast that it's required, but I do genuinely like it, mostly because it is in fact just convenient. It pushes everything that I'm doing a little bit further away from the pouches, and it does push everything that I'm doing a little bit further away than a bolt lock reload, and it keeps me on task away from the pouches and on what it is that I'm doing, which is in the context of a fight or military action or whatever, there's always 2 billion things more to think about than the shooting part or the weapons manipulation part, so I personally really do like that quite a bit. That said, one more thing, one tiny little caveat here. If you have two magazines that are of the same manufacturer, the magazine that's in the Redi-Mag is just a hair longer than the one that's in the gun. Now, for those of you that have crippling autism, that's going to bother you a whole bunch. If you want to flush it out, make sure that the magazine that's in the gun has a slightly larger base plate than the one that's in the friggin' Redi-Mag. For instance, if you're trying to solve this problem, a P-Mag in the gun and then a GI magazine in the Redi-Mag, or a Lancer in the Redi-Mag, right? So that you got that leveled out. But is this a real issue? No, it's not, because the only time that this even comes up is if you're on real flat concrete, which, if we're talking about the context of a fight, chances are you're probably not, and even if you are, you're not going to notice in the first place because you have bigger things to worry about than the tiniest little difference in length between the two. It's not a big deal at all, it's just a little thing that I noticed because I am rather autistic sometimes. But that said, I personally think it's an oldie but a goodie, and if you're interested in it after this video, I'd check it out. So, if you would like to support us through Patreon, you absolutely can. If you want to check us out on our social media stuff, you can still do that. And if you want to come train with us, links for all of this stuff are in the description below. If you want to support us through Patreon and help out with your training, $41 a month gets you as much open enrollment training as you would like to, unless we have a logistically challenging course like a private class or a soft skin vehicle class for fairly obvious reasons. Also, if and only if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful to you, go ahead and give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit the little notification bell, share us around and all that stuff. We're doing our best to produce high quality content. And remember guys, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.